So just so you know, we're officially recording. So whatever you do say now is officially given in evidence. So welcome to the Dope Black Dad podcast. My name is Marvin Harrison. I'm here today for a very special podcast. I am here with some people that I very much love, like, and have desired to speak to for a period of time. So it's a very joyous occasion for me. I'll quickly give you the context for me on this conversation is me and Leanne, my very good friend, who you've seen on the podcast a few times, we had a conversation about female empowering and empowerment and what that does for the voices of men. And so we'll go into that very shortly so you can hear the backstory of how we arrived at that point. And then we realized that as much as men in the open say that they don't feel that there is an impact between women's voices and empowerment and how they feel that they can speak in public, as soon as we asked, are there any questions that you would like to ask Black women anonymously, there was a stream of questions in a very short period of time. So I have enrolled these wonderful women to answer these questions on behalf of Black men from all walks of life, mainly Dope Black Men and Dope Black Dads on Facebook and WhatsApp. So I'm going to start, but very quickly, just to say we have Nkechi with us, who's like my spiritual guidance and very good friend, someone I love very much. We have Dominique, who I originally met as a pro-Brexit supporter and conservative, but then has become someone that I've agreed with on a few more subjects than I would consider and has a really interesting point of view. So I wanted her with me today. We have Leanne, Dr. Leanne Levers, so I have to keep putting it there, who I met about a year ago, but has become ingrained in my circle also founder of Dope Black Women UK. And then we also have Genelle, who's a journalist, a very good friend. We're building our friendship. It's very early, but I'm working on it. And we're going to be working together going forward on a few different things. So you'll see that coming down the line. So thank you all for joining me. So Leanne, do you just want to quickly recap the scenario you found yourself in where the topic kind of arose from?
Yeah, so I mean, just to give a quick synopsis, I am in the process of moving home, and within that, I've been having many conversations with people, mostly men, who have indicated that they feel silenced by, not just dope Black women, but actually just female empowerment generally. And women have said that as well, actually, that they don't really, they're not, a few women have said that they don't agree with feminism generally. And more specifically, there was an instance where I was on Twitter and I responded to somebody's comment, and because they didn't agree with my opinion around their comment or my interpretation of their comment, which the issue was kind of surrounding domestic violence, they just kind of slated me, insulted my intellect, told me to.
Could you give some context as to what
that
is?
Context?
Well, let's keep it spicy. This is Twitter, so I assume it's something hugely articulate.
So there is a dancehall artist, a female dancehall artist named Ishano, who was in a relationship with another dancehall artist or a prominent dancehall figure, and their relationship was very abusive. So the person who tweeted posted a video of Ishano with some very controversial lyrics. I guess he was calling her stupid as well, and essentially was like, "Oh, she deserves photo," which is the name of the dancehall artist she was with. And I responded and said, "Oh, I didn't know that controversial lyrics meant that you should get the shit beat out of you." And then he kind of responded to say that's why he didn't mean it that way, and why would I be so dumb or stupid as to make that assumption? And I was really just trying to state to him that he didn't articulate himself well enough to make that clear that that wasn't what he was talking about. And I guess as I was saying to Marvin, I wondered why he didn't think about that when he was writing the statement. Why the huge issue and very public issue of their domestic violence issue didn't come to the forefront of his mind when he was saying she deserved a man like him. And it just escalated. And as I said, he insulted my intellect until it got to a point where he told myself and my friend to fuck off and shut the fuck up. And then he told me to suck my mother, which I'm sure, culturally is like one of the worst things you can say to anybody, regardless of a man or a woman. And so, yeah, that's kind of how we got to this point. And I was saying to Marvin earlier that as much as I do try to champion women's rights and men's rights, Black men's rights, I do also, I'm very conscious of the fact that I never want to make anybody feel silenced by the way in which I position myself or the way in which I articulate myself.
So from that, really the question is how do you feel? And I suppose have you seen any impact, or can you foresee any impact on men through the current phase of female empowerment? And to be honest, it's one of those things where we all want female empowerment. I think we can, we want progression in the key areas for women. We want there to be a genuine growth in terms of how we look at the world, how the world is managed. But can you understand the impact that men would have or would be on the receiving end of as a result of women being empowered at this time? I'm going to go to Dom for this one.
One of the main things that spring to mind is the topic of abortion. Now, I know that abortion's like a very controversial topic, more so in like America, for example, but it is an important one, I think, generally. And I think when it comes to female empowerment, I think sometimes the conversation can go from, helping women feel empowered to essentially shutting down male voices. So, for example, people that say that, men can't have an opinion on abortion because they don't have children, which I think can be counterintuitive because it takes two people to have a child. So I think men can have an opinion and should have an opinion about abortion, for example. But just generally in terms of female empowerment impacting men, I think it also depends on what you believe female empowerment is, because it can mean different things to different people. So it depends on what you view it as.
And how far down the line do you see men's views being able to be involved in something like abortion? How much of a say is it? How far can it go? Because ultimately it's a woman's body and there is that argument. But how far can it go?
I think they should have an equal say, in my opinion. I don't think they should have more of a say than women. I don't think they should have less a say than women, because at the end of the day, it takes two to tango, it takes two to make a child. So I think that men should have an equal say. But in terms of, say, lawmaking, I don't think the view of men on abortion should unfairly impact women in that way. So say, for example, if a woman decides to go through with an abortion and the man didn't want that, I personally think it's morally wrong, but I don't think that legally there should be anything to stop her from doing that if she was to choose to.
That's interesting. Nkechi, what are your thoughts about that, but also generally just in the impact of men?
Wow. In general, I feel like it's actually about the way that men feel about themselves, because the impact of a woman empowering themselves, if a man is centered within himself, then any form of empowerment by his counterpart shouldn't be a silencing tool or felt like it was going to impact on them. Because for me, the men that I know, the strong men that I know, just wouldn't view my voice to silence theirs. So therefore, for me, I think it would be about possibly looking about how those men feel about themselves. And looking in the mirror and looking at themselves and saying, well, what is this about? Why am I feeling silenced, impacted by a woman having a voice or being viewed as equal to me?
So I suppose I'll extend one of the views from one of the guys is, if we are saying that ultimately the world is being delivered by men and driven by men and made around men, that doesn't necessarily apply to all men. Some men haven't had a say in it. Some men have never been on the wrong side of feminism. And so ultimately, we haven't benefited in the way that is being suggested. We have benefit in other ways. And so now at this point, the intentional design of trying to propel women into the forefront can come at the consequence of other good men. It's not a universal line of, if we create this grant program where women get a £10,000 grant for development of their skill set, that doesn't necessarily in 2020 mean that that's all going to go to women who need it, and it's all, and every man that doesn't get it doesn't need it because he's benefited down the line somewhere else. So I think it's not as straightforward as just saying, you
But I
know,
think the
men
balance
benefit
is
and
the
don't.
balance is so there is no balance right now.
Mm.
We have been at a negative for a much longer period of time. So at the end of the day, now to try and realign that equality, there has to be that investment.
Mm.
So of course, not every man's going to have benefited from a grant, a this, a that,
Mm.
but just from unfortunately, from the fact that he is a man. So if I'm Leanne and I'm a doctor,
Mm.
and then there's Joe and he's a doctor,
Mm.
right? Leanne may have had to work a lot harder
Mm.
to establish herself because she's a female within a male-dominated field,
Mm.
for example. Yeah. So when another girl comes up, Dominique, yeah, she needs to be given an additional funding, additional support to get to the level that Joe's got to, just because Joe is in a male-dominated industry.
Mm.
So what I'm saying is, if the balance is so uneven and has been so uneven, that ultimately there has to be investment in women coming to the forefront and equality. You know, I mean, if we can't get if we can't get equal pay still, I mean, what's happening here?
So then
I mean,
does that still work out in terms of, if you break it down from gender into race, into socioeconomic background? Because some would argue that white women have benefited from the structure more than black women have, for example.
yeah.
Percentage-wise, the data will say that BAME, although I don't like the term, but BAME people are more disadvantaged than not. So how do you break it down, the age, the regionality? So someone from Manchester versus London, if it's that level of application of funding and support, then it's not only data-led or insight-led, but it's also situational based. So it could apply to anybody, but you have to fulfill certain quotas. So I know the BBC now, when you apply for a job there, they ask you, do you have two parents? What did your parents do? Where are your parents based? Like that kind of questions, because it's really trying to level out the playing field.
Right.
Genelle, do you have a view at all?
No, yeah. I mean, I think when it comes to men feeling that women's empowerment is disempowering them, I think a lot of that has to do with, if someone has 100% or say 90% of something, and now we're trying to make it more 50-50. Well, even though you're taking away maybe just 40% and they've still got 50%,
yeah,
for them that feels like a loss, because they had all of that before and now they have less. So I think that's why some men do feel like it's disempowering to them, because they're seeing it as some kind of pie that's now being divvied up in a different way, which means they have less. But the reality is, it doesn't really quite work that way, because like you said, there's so many other factors that come into it. So that woman getting that job potentially that a man thinks he should get, well, he might not have got that job anyway. There might have been another man that was better than him. And so it's not really a like for like, but I think because we have these discussions in such a binary way, it can be really hard for us to have the discussion well in a way that allows people to see it's so much more nuanced than just because women are having more, now you've got less. But I think that's sometimes how it's seen.
Yeah, so I get that perspective. So I think my view is very much for, there should be more female CEOs, there should be more female leaders of countries. That makes logical sense. I think where the challenge comes is then when there is a fund created. So within my business, for example, they will create a women's breakfast meeting thing where women go off and have a conversation on their own together, or have some speakers in to talk about how to be leaders in the workplace. Now, that's not creating and taking from somewhere else. That's creating a whole new thing to cater for women under this guise that they need to be leaders. And I'll be honest, I've never received leadership training in my life. I'm winging it, just probably like most other people are. I would have loved to have had the leadership training too. Does that change the landscape of
No,
what
it
you're
doesn't,
seeing?
because as a man, you're more likely to get that job anyway than a woman. So in the sense, and men are often viewed on their potential, whereas women are viewed on their experience. So women are more likely to need a women's breakfast to learn from another female leader who's then going to champion that person, because it is more likely that a man's going to get the job anyway. So these spaces have only ever been created because men have much more informal ways and access to speaking to other men about leadership, the pub after work, golf, all those different spaces where all those conversations happen, where often women are not invited or don't feel welcome. So we've had to create our own ecosystems to allow us to be able to just be on a equal footing, and like was just said, double the footing, so we can just be in the same place.
And so in your view, it's about all women and all men. There is no breakdown further of the type of women and the type of men that have benefited and not benefited.
You have to think about, I think class is such an important factor that doesn't get talked about as much. And you was kind of speaking about that with the BBC and the way they're doing it, because they're looking into, okay, well, there are some women who will have had more of a leg up than a man, because she might have more money or come from a family that has a family name that she's benefiting from. So it's never that binary. But I think in general, we can look at the figures and see there's a mass inequality on gender lines. Men are benefiting.
Yeah. So I think there was a comedian, I think it was Dave Chappelle, who said white women have been a part of the heist. They just now don't like their cut. Could anyone speak to that statement or that view?
Well, I was just reading an article earlier today that spoke to the fact that actually in the States, at least, white women are the most, benefit the most from affirmative action, but they're also the biggest opponents of it. And I think that speaks perfectly to what Dave Chappelle said, is that, you know, I think people, or I don't want to specific to white women, but, you know, I think people are quite happy to accept the benefits of something, but refuse it on the principle if it's still benefiting people who they deem less important than them or less equal to them. And so, yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Cool. Anyone else?
I don't really get the statement. So what was he trying to say, that white women have?
Yeah, so the view is that white men have created society in land that's been stolen. I think this is a longer tail part of the joke, but they've created this construct, and white women have benefited by being in their homes and being the first in line for benefits that were aimed at women. So usually when equality initiatives are gender equality initiatives are created, the first ones that get them are white women by the proximity of white men. And so they are technically a part of the heist, as in the problem. But now they just don't like their cut. And so they are asking for reform, change, and evolution, but they're not doing it holistically, i.e. including all women. They're including women that they look like them and they think live their version of life. Does that make more sense?
Yeah,
I agree, but does the point make sense?
Well, could you give me an example of where that's actually happened?
Does anyone else have an example? I won't pretend to understand the intersections between black women and white women.
Well, the affirmative action one that I just mentioned I think is a pretty clear example. I think, yeah, I mean, I think the suffrage movement is an example. I mean, the suffrage movement actively excluded black women from that movement because they thought it would be less viable if they included black women in many spaces. So I think the foundations of feminism are built upon the exclusion of women of color generally, but more specifically black women, which is why you have the creation of things like womanism and black feminism, which generations of women like Alice Walker and Audre Lorde speak to their experiences all the time. I mean, history is an example.
Okay, but in terms of like 2020 today and in this country, could you give me an example of where white women have said that they do not want affirmative action or positive discrimination?
Oh, there are a New York Times article that was written late last year, just literally, that's what I'm referencing. I'm not referencing an old article, I'm referencing something that's relatively recent, like within the past year/6 months.
And I'm not sure it's about anyone actively saying we don't want to include Black women in this, as in most things.
No, it's an oversight.
You speak. Yeah, exactly. You speak to most. Yeah, you speak to most men. They're like, yeah, women's equality, great. Okay, well, will you give up your job? No, of course they're not. So I think it's about when people come to, well, who's going to get this slice of the pie? Then oftentimes that's where the problems come. So, like, for instance, the hashtag Me Too. That movement was started in 2009 by a Black woman. It gained its viralness in 2017 and traction from Harvey Weinstein. And, you know, it took a while for actually that to come to the fore, that actually this was something that was started nearly 10 years ago by a Black woman. She's now getting lots of props and, you know, her name's now known. But in the beginning, she was not recognized at all. And it was like a brand new thing that's happened. It wasn't brand new, it was old. And I'm not saying that they purposely did that. I don't think they did purposely did, but they forgot to remember that they didn't start it.
All right, okay. That's more clear, because affirmative action is just like a general policy that was created post the civil rights movement. So that's why I was asking for like a specific time where white women have done that, because it's a very broad kind of concept. That's all.
So just very quickly, just there, I'm going to probably have to restart this video again. For some reason, it stops at 40 minutes and I didn't upgrade, and I don't want to try and do it now because it might be too late. So that's my error. But then let me just move into the questions that men have gone into. So I'll just restart in a sec.
Okay.
So thank you guys for that. That's really interesting. And I think I've got more insight from your perspective than I did doing 2 podcasts on this previously. I think there's a more rounded view. One of the challenges we have is sometimes we get into a viewpoint as dope Black dads and as men, and then we need to invite more women into that understanding, which is why this is more of a one-way approach. I just want to hear from you, and then we can add that to our last 2 conversations on the matter. But as I said earlier, men were definitely looking into, and when asked and prompted, is there a question you wanted to ask Black women that you could do anonymously? And as I said, I got 28, actually it's turned into 30 questions now in like 12 minutes. So I wanted to ask some of those questions. If you feel like it applies to you or you feel you have a view, just jump in and answer it how you see fit. Some of them are quite simple, but some of them are a bit more complex, but just dive in. So the first one was, do you empower your man? And if so, how? Which is an apt from the previous point.
Absolutely.
How?
And when? I feel like I feel like in any relationship that I've been in with a Black man, because I've only been in relationships with Black men, I've always spoken power into them. I've always encouraged them. I've always lifted them up. I've always especially encouragement, and also I've also been extremely aware of not emasculating my man. For me, it's a major thing, I think, within our community that we have to be very, very careful of. To something as simple as not talking down to him or correcting him in a particular way in front of people, to, you know, not saying you're not doing enough, you're not earning enough, what's going to happen here, like kind of being like that. So for me, it's always been that if he's empowered, then our family lifts. If he's empowered, then the relationship lifts. And that's part of my job as a dope Black woman within a relationship. I think that's a major responsibility that we have, and I think we need to respect it.
Cool. Anyone else? Cool. The next one is, do you trust your man's dream, and how do you approach your next 5 to 10 years together? And that can be hypothetical or literal.
Actually, I was just going to say, I don't have a boyfriend, but I would say that I do kind of prefer ambitious men. So if my man were to have an ambition, then I would support him wholeheartedly to do that and pursue it, because I feel like it's important to have a partner that encourages you and supports you no matter what you want to do. And I obviously would have my own ambitions and the things that I'd want to do. So in terms of like approaching that in the next 5 to 10 years, I'd kind of see it as a way to work together and move together up, instead of it being kind of a competition, which I think sometimes it does come into when it comes to men and women in a relationship. Because I feel like men a lot of the time often feel intimidated by women that are more ambitious than them. So yeah.
What was the bit about trust, Marvin? Because I think that's a really key point there. You said something about trust.
Do you trust your man's dreams, i.e. the direction he wants to take the family in, and how do you approach your next 5 to 10 years together?
I think probably in a lot of relationships that trust is not there. I don't think women, I'm not going to speak for every woman, but I think that especially ambitious, motivated women may listen to a man's dream. This may be unpopular, but may listen to the man's dream, but may feel like he needs support in executing that, and may take the reins in certain aspects to ensure that it is executed. I think that's the realest thing I could say.
It's
to be
true.
Wow. Cool. And what do you reckon has driven that? Is that always been the case, or I feel like in a different era we would have, you know, a man would have driven the vision for the family. Somewhere there's been a breakdown. Is there a catalyst or a moment or a transition that you can identify?
I would love to be able to identify a moment, but I do think that my generation and the generation before me, which will probably be my mother's generation, were empowered with more education, were empowered with the idea that you could buy a house by yourself, you can do all these things by yourself, whereas the generation before that, that being my grandmother's generation, they couldn't even sign a mortgage. So it just, with time and the development of what we're able to do as women on our own, I think that might have been where the turn occurred.
I'd say that in like male and female relationships, I'd say that kind of overtly the man has had more control financially in terms of like the immediate direction of where the family goes. But socially, I feel like women have always had that kind of influence on the internal kind of runnings of a household and the direction that takes. But I just think that as time has progressed and women have obviously had more control over their finances and just freedom in general, it's kind of become both social and financial, I'd say.
Cool. We're going to stop there. I'm going to email you the link now. Just click and rejoin. Thanks, guys. 1 sec.
Yeah.
And so
now I can see you all.
And so the next question is, what actually are your expectations of Black men? So I did a panel with Black Twitter, and one of the questions is that Black men don't defend Black women enough. I had my view, which I'll share after, but it'll be very much good to hear from you. What are your expectations, even though we're not a monolith, but what are your expectations of Black men in regards to Black women?
We're not a monolith, that is so true. But my expectation, my parents are both, they're both married to each other still. And I've grown up in a family very much with a supportive father. But I can even tell you, as much as I love my dad and I love him to bits, he has no idea what it's like to be in this world as a Black woman. And sometimes even when I'm sharing with him, okay, well, this is the situation, it's like he doesn't quite believe me. And I know that's not because he doesn't love me or doesn't trust what I say, but I think too many Black men almost just don't believe that the world is the way it is towards Black women, even though all the evidence is there. And I think for Black women in general, without being a monolith, that's very hurtful, actually. It's very hurtful that when certain things happen, people want to be stepping in, playing devil's advocate. And as I saw the other day, there's no devil. You're the devil because you're the person who doesn't believe me. And it's just like, you're the devil that doesn't believe what I'm saying, and that's why you're trying to stand in that gap. And so I have a thing where when people do that to me, well, just play devil's advocate, forget it, forget the conversation, let's just stop this. If you don't believe me, then that's fine, but don't pretend to stand with me and then don't stand with me. And that's kind of, I think, my issue with black men. Either if you don't believe what we're saying, fine, but don't say you believe us and then don't stand up for us, or don't stand up for us publicly and just want to stand with us in private. That's not okay.
Oh, the secret DMers when you're under pressure. Those ones.
Those people need to all like leave. They can Brexit because no, not okay.
Cool. Does anyone want to add to that? No? Cool.
Gosh. Do you know what? I just expect respect, honesty, loyalty, you know, normal things.
Cool.
Yeah.
And also, and I would like that on a public platform, in public places, when one of us is being attacked. I mean, there's been a lot of it on Twitter this week. Yeah. Like, you know, where are the guys? I was like, where are the guys defending this girl? Where are the guys? I mean, I'm not going to speak on what it was, but I'm just like, where are the black men saying, no, hold on a minute, just chill out, to the other black man, you know, blah de blah. There was no black men jumping to this person's defense.
What was the
and
thing?
I was just like, what's going on here?
I think I missed the thing. What's the thing?
Pardon?
What was the incident that happened this week?
And the incident was Jammer from Way Better Know, ZZ Mills.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it was just insane.
Yeah,
and even down to black women, I was like, where are the black women? Where are the black women? Like, because even though we may not agree with everything that she says or whatever, at that point, she had been brought into something that had nothing to do with her. And then was the one really holding all the fire hits. And I was just like, all these black men are watching this happening, and nobody's stepping to her defense. And I felt so disappointed in my black men, because I was like, this was the time to just be a black man and just defend your girl. Like, come on.
Just to surmise, Jammer, who's a MC producer, just was having a conversation with another black woman about something completely separate, and then
I know what it was. Was it about finding them attractive?
Yeah,
and then he drew for a picture of ZZ Mills, who's a popular commentator, and said, "Is this what you call attractive?" And you know, I think ultimately the calling out of her, and actually she is attractive, so it was quite a weird thing.
It was sickening. I felt sick.
And also we wouldn't objectify someone like that. It's just not where we are. And then I suppose he was calling for his own credentials of being like a community leader, to say he does help the black community out. I'm not sure what you guys are talking about. It's quite a murky space, but I was very disappointed. To be fair, we did at the time publicly support ZZ at the moment, but in general, I did find the whole thing a little bit, very much disgusting, to be honest.
Yeah.
Cool. How can we support you in the corporate world? And so we know that women are moving up in the career world. And what role can black men play to support black women at this time, whether upfront or supporting offline?
I think. Sorry, I feel like. No,
I just think being someone that they can turn to for like familiarity, because I feel like in places where it's very white dominated, you often like feel kind of a bit of relief when you see like someone else that's black. That's just like the reality. So I think just being there as someone that they can turn to for familiarity is helpful. I think the tone of this discussion has often been framed as women being almost subordinate to men without you guys actually meaning to. I don't need a man to support me just because I'm a woman. I'm like pretty capable of being able to support myself and move up the ranks myself as a woman. I've seen with lots of women in lots of situations. So me just being a woman and them just being a man doesn't automatically like mean that they're going to suddenly be in a position to support me. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think. Sorry. Oh, no. I was going to say, in the corporate world, I think as well, you always need allies, you always need champions, you always need sponsors. And I think some black men are definitely in those positions to be that for black women. And I think they should do that when they're in those positions. And also in the recognize the intersection of being Black and female in a workplace, and how those two biases can be two bigger barriers than just being a Black man in a workplace sometimes. And so it's not necessarily about them helping you up, but like you say, about them being that familiar person in the place, and also publicly standing with you.
I think it's worse for Black men in the workplace than women. I think women, Black women, are often seen as less intimidating just because we're women, and also other men that normally dominate those spaces might find us attractive, so therefore maybe treat us with a bit more preference. I personally think it's way worse being a Black man in society than it is a Black woman.
I think they have different challenges.
Challenges
within the workplace, and I don't think, and this is the thing, this is the whole conversation to a degree, that just because one gender is experiencing X doesn't mean the other gender isn't experiencing Y, and vice versa. I just think that the challenges are different within the corporate world and within society in general. Absolutely, Black men do not have it easy within the corporate workplace, but also they can get to a certain echelon and then not really want to do anything to rock the boat, and not be controversial. And supporting a Black woman may be deemed as a bit like, oh, you're standing with your own. Oh, okay, blah 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 blah. So I just think that I think that the challenges are different, and our challenges as Black women are probably much quieter and not as blatant, and also we probably just deal with them in a different way and discuss them in a different way. That's just my little
How would you deal with your partner having different views on either raising children? For like you, Dom, if someone was a Remainer Labour supporter, could you date them in the same way? Would that impact how you look at them if they how would you deal with that?
I don't know, like for me, I don't feel like I could date someone that had extreme views, whether extreme right or extreme left. I don't think I could be with someone that was extreme, because obviously a big part of my life is like expressing my views. I obviously have a platform to do that, and I do a lot of it all the time. It's a huge part of my life. So really, I don't think someone that had really strong views that were the opposite to me would want to be with me anyway, and vice versa. So I don't think it's essential, but I would prefer to date someone that had the same political views as me, because often your political views shape the outlook you have on life and your perspective. So that would be important, but I wouldn't refuse to even entertain someone that didn't think exactly the way I did.
Yeah.
So I think that's
so for argument's sake, would you consider yourself right center?
Yeah, I would consider myself, I don't know, because there's when we say right left, it's kind of difficult, because I'd mostly just describe myself as conservative. I kind of pivot from right wing, centre right to conservative, so like it's around there somewhere. I'd say I'd be more comfortable describing myself as conservative, really.
Yeah, and then where would too far right be with you? Where's the line? What's the rhetoric, or what's the view that would, or the areas that would be too far for you?
I think far right, a lot of people that I've come across that are far right have a lot of the time they have weird views when it comes to race and things like that. So obviously it wouldn't make sense for me to be someone that's racist, because that doesn't make sense.
Cool. How has sexual misconduct by men affected your way of living? And so when I say sexual misconduct, I'm using that term as a catch-all for the full spectrum of sexual misconduct, all the way up to rape, to catcalling. How has that culture impacted your way of living?
I think it makes you navigate life differently on a daily basis, whether it is you're navigating, should you go to a certain place late at night? I mean, I think that's the added element to being a woman in many instances, is that unlike men, we can't even navigate physically the same way that men do, just because of a matter of physical safety, or it is a decision you have to make. It's a consideration that has to be made. to the very idea of kind of trying to determine whether someone is genuine in their intentions or not, you know, and responding to that, and also just having to navigate responding to the catcalling or the more suggestive or more salacious, you know, approaches, and not being perceived as the angry Black woman or the ugly girl who just, you know, doesn't know what they're being put up against, or, you know, she doesn't know what she's being offered, and that kind of thing. So I think there are lots of different ways which affects women on a daily basis.
Cool. Do you believe in joint accounts and finances in relationships?
No.
This can be a short or quick answer.
Yes.
I don't.
Tell me why.
You know what? This is a real big one for me, and been a big one in my marriage. Because my mum just always told me, don't have any joint account with no man. Just real simple like that. Have your own.
Yeah, have your own, but would you also have a joint one for the sake of paying bills, etc.,
Yeah, so
etc.?
we had one that's joint for bills, etc. But everybody just puts their money, like the both of us just put our money in there, and then the bills come out. But yeah, I don't know. I've got to say, and I'm be very, very honest, I have been really, really funny about that.
Yeah, I can understand that.
You can't see my face, but yeah, a bit funny about that. A bit funny about financial independence as a whole. And I'm not saying that that's a positive thing, but or necessarily a negative thing. Maybe I'm a bit extreme. I probably am a bit extreme, and have been a bit extreme in like just keeping, like, if I've got £5 in my bank account, then I'll just ride it out. Foolishness. How can I be? How, you know? But that has happened for me. So yeah, I'm not really down.
Cool.
I think I'm big on being.
That's totally been programmed into me by my mother. So thanks, Mum.
I think I'm big on being an equal contributor, and so I like the idea of, yes, us both having our separate accounts and maintaining sort of independence, but then knowing that we're both equally contributing to the house, so that we're on an even playing field, kind of thing.
Cool. This one I'm going to try and give some context to. So this is someone in a long-term relationship. So let's say they're like 6-7 years in. Do you see your man's sexual gratification as a chore? So I think the question is really around, after a long period of time, does it become work, and what do you do about it, and how do you view it?
No, not at all. Nor should he view my gratification as a chore for him. Like, I think both, you know, sexual satisfaction is a super important part of a relationship, and it's an important part, and so I don't view it as a chore at all.
And just to compound, because it's connected, why do you think men and women's sexual appetites so vastly differ?
I saw that question and I said, are they?
Yeah, I think
it's so super blanket, man. That's such a blanket thing to say.
So you can tell them
the thing about the long-term relationship thing, right? The fact of the matter is, relationships take work. Yeah, if you have to learn within your marriage, your long-term relationship, to be able to have honest conversations, and I think a lot of us aren't having honest conversations about where we're at sexually and what we want and how we want it, and etc. So therefore that leads into the second question, which is about, well, why are our sexual gratification needs so far
different apart? Yeah,
I just don't think we're talking to each other honestly and openly about our sexual desires, about where we're at sexually. I just think somehow, somewhere in long-term relationships, that conversation doesn't get prioritized, whereas actually the deeper into the relationship you go, the more of a priority that conversation should be, because more things come in to distract you from that.
Powerful.
I think it's like a bit more like simple than that. I just think biologically, can't think specifically, but biologically men do have higher sex drives in general than women do. I don't really know why that is. It's just
They
like,
pumped us full of testosterone. It's not our fault.
it's the testosterone difference. So some of these differences are natural between men and women, which is like really quite interesting. So I think it's good to kind of acknowledge those differences and find ways to kind of work around them so it works for both. But I don't think you'll ever get to a point where men and women have like equal sex drives, because we're just not built to be that way. We're not built to be the same as men.
Cool. Have you now or ever had a work husband from an insecure dot black dad?
I've never had one of those.
No, me neither. I don't know how people have the time if they're working hard. Because I feel like I don't have the time to cultivate that level of relationship. And also, I think for me, I just have really firm rules around dating at work, which is I don't do it. And also that I don't flirt with people at work, because I just have seen it to be a slippery slope. And also I've always wanted to be taken really seriously in my career, and so that's meant, you know, having mentors who are often older than you, because of the situation, often male. And I just always wanted to for it to never be a question about how I got to where I got to. And so for me,
the lurker mentor, the lurker mentor guy. That guy. I can help you navigate this world, you know. All right, go ahead.
So yeah, so no.
Cool. What's your relationship like with your father, and how has that impacted how you see men? Damn.
Wow.
Therapy today. But I'm with you. We can hold hands if you want.
My dad's actually he actually passed away when I was really ill. So it's a bit different for me, because I've always grown up with just my mum, who's been both like my mum and my dad, and a lot of other family members as well. So I think that's impacted me, because I've always had a very independent view of myself as a woman, in that like I shouldn't have to rely on a man for anything or to do anything. And that's something that my mum has instilled within me a lot. But one thing I won't let it do, and I disagree with my mum on this topic a lot, is I won't let that skewer my view of men in general. So for example, I do believe that every child deserves to have a mother and a father, and I think that's essential, specifically when it comes to Black people as well. I think that's really essential. And just that men and women are different, but I feel like our differences intentionally complement each other. So I try not to let that negatively impact the way I view men and interact with them, which it's been kind of a learning curve, but that's the conclusion that I've kind of come to.
So, anyone else?
I think. Oh,
I know you go.
Oh, I think I've spoken before about this, that my dad passed away too, and we had a very kind of tumultuous relationship when I was growing up, because I was privy to his cheating and kind of his very kind of sexist, misogynistic behavior towards my mom. And but as I got older, you know, there were moments where we reconnected and were able to have really honest and open conversations. And I think for me, what it did was that it gave me a better understanding of some of the justification or the reasons for some of the ways in which post-colonial West Indian men behave. You know, like their inability to talk about their emotions, or their expectations of women to be, you know, both kind of virginal and extraordinary, and, you know, hardworking businesswoman, but still submissive. And giving me that greater insight, I think, has propelled me to be a greater champion of supporting Black men. And I think that's been a great thing for me. So yeah, that's kind of how.
Cool. Do you choose to wear your hair which is not naturally yours? And if so, why? And also, do you feel it devalues you in any way? Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Repeat the last bit, Mark.
Do you choose to wear your hair in a which is not naturally yours? And if so, why? And then the secondary question of it is, do you feel it devalues you in any way?
Wow.
I mean, I wear hair extensions, I wear weaves, I wear my hair natural sometimes. I went through a stage presenting on air where I would only wear my hair natural, just because for me, as a Black female newsreader, I just felt that was just a little personal stand that I wanted to take. But I would still wear hair extensions sometimes when I was off screen, it was a point I was trying to make, I suppose. But no, we're born naked, but we wear clothes. You know why? Because it's better for everyone. And that's not why I wear my hair in a particular way, but I'm just for freedom of expression in that sense. Sometimes I wear makeup, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I wear my hair natural, sometimes I don't. Depends how I feel, depends what mood I'm in, and depends what I'm doing. And I really hate to think that we've gone to a place where we really think hair is kind of still a defining factor of who we are. I just think live and let live, wear your hair exactly how you please. That's how I feel.
I think with Black men, hair is such a massive topic, particularly with Black women and Black men, because I've seen personally a lot of the reasons Black men give for not finding Black women attractive is the fact that we don't like regularly wear our own hair, which I think is a bit of a weird one. I mean, is there, like, for you, is there anything about your hair that you don't like, which is why you wear kind of a weave? Because for me personally, I have alternated between wearing a weave and then wearing, I think it was a ponytail hair extension. And a lot of it was because of like insecurities about my own hair, and also the fact that environments that I was in, they often wouldn't have hair like I did, so I'd often feel like I had to assimilate sometimes. But yeah, is there anything like about your hair that you don't like, which is why you wear a weave?
No,
Because
like my hair's fine because I got like a full head of hair, and so and I can wear it. So I wear it to, I'll wear it out. I don't think it's anything for me. That's because I guess to me, because I wear makeup, but I don't always wear makeup. And it's a thing that I have that I always feel like you should never feel like you can't go out the house without your own hair, without your own face. Yeah. And if you get to that stage, then you're at a problem stage when you can't do it. But I think when you can do it, for me, it's just not a big deal. Like of all the issues in life that I think there are for us to talk about, debate, campaign, for me personally, hair is just not one of them. That's me.
I definitely feel that my hair is a form of my expression. It's the way I express myself. And interestingly enough, I find that the older that I get, the more I struggle. Struggle's a strong word, but like I wouldn't. Like last 2 birthdays ago, for example, I had my hair in locks. I had my hair in twists. I had my hair in plaits, all this kind of stuff. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to wear my hair straight for my birthday. And I put this weave in my hair and I was just like, I don't even feel like me anymore. So for me, it's quite a powerful thing. I kind of felt like, I completely respect what you're saying, Genelle, by the way. Like, I think that it's an expression and you do what you want. For me personally, that was the last time I wore my hair straight. I've just turned 40. I was going to wear my hair in one piece of high ponytail, long coming out and all this kind of business. And then I literally woke up and was like, oh, no, that's not what we're doing. I need to have some form of braid. I need to have some form of texture, because for me, that's what I now feel like is synonymous to me. Like, I will wear natural protective styles because my daughter has one piece of head of hair, and we can't have 2 women dealing with the big piece of hair in the household right now. So, do you know what I mean? But for me, it's become a thing. I will wear my own hair straight, but probably not for very long either. But I don't know. I don't think it's anything political. I mean, maybe I need to explore that. But definitely for me, I was just like, oh no, I can't do that anymore. That's weird.
Cool. Do you believe you can be pro-Black and in an interracial relationship?
Of course.
I don't think so.
I think I would find it difficult to find that to be true. I think if you are essentially pro-Black, and I guess it's a continuum, like it's how far along, how extreme are you in your beliefs about what it means to be pro-Black. But for me, and I can just speak for myself, is that I personally, because I believe that kind of my views around Blackness are so deeply embedded, and there is a certain level of comfort in dating someone who understands and is a part of that culture. I think I personally would find it difficult to date outside of my race, as much as I would find it difficult to date a Black man who is not invested in Blackness at all, you know?
Yeah, I don't think that you can, because the whole point of being pro-Black is wanting to strengthen Black people on the whole, and to date outside of your race, I don't think makes sense. I was on a pro-Black page, and I was saying that you could be pro-Black and date outside of your race, and like the amount of abuse I got, like I don't identify with that anymore, because I find it to be a lot of the time a very extreme ideology that's very restrictive. And although people do say being pro-Black isn't being anti-white, if you're saying to someone that they can't be invested in Blackness or progressing Blackness on the whole without dating outside of their race, they can't like be pro-Black if they date outside of the race. And I just think that's a bit extreme for me. So I think logically, if you think of the way pro-Black people kind of think, then the answer would be no, which is why I personally don't identify with that label.
I probably would have said no in the past, but more recently I have dated outside of my race because I'm getting older, and you know, you have to widen your pool of options. But I think, you know, I look at someone like, whether or not you agree with his politics or how he conducts himself, David Lammy. He's married to a white woman. I don't think you could hear him speak in the Commons in more recent times in the impassioned way he does and say that he's not pro-Black or that he doesn't want to advance the Black community. I get why for some people it's problematic. But again, I think we live in a world that's so much more mixed now than it ever has been before. I think, like you say, if you take the true pro-Black stance and you say, no, you can't. But actually, I think for some people, they might have moved along that continuum.
Cool.
I don't think that's pro-Black then. I just think that's just politically wanting to help your community. I don't think that the whole pro-Black label, I don't think that can necessarily be applied, because
I don't think being pro-Black is a label. I think for me, being pro-Black is I'm pro-Black people, I'm pro our advancement, and that for me means being for something. So for me, I don't know if for me, I label it in that way, but I feel like I'm Black, I'm for Black people, I'm for our advancement as a people, Black men and Black women and Black children.
But if you're for the advancement of Black people, you would specifically aim to reproduce with Black men. That's like the logical kind of.
I mean, I certainly have an appreciation for that point of view, but I would also say that I think of myself as pro-Black, but I certainly don't think of myself as excluding white people from being able to contribute to that movement. Yeah. You know, I think that I do think that there is a difference in approach that should be done if you're an ally versus a person who is actually Black and has engaged in that struggle and that lifestyle and that culture. But I don't think it's exclusionary by any stretch of the imagination.
And I think all the statistics will tell you, if you're dating, as I am, over 35, as a Black woman, your options of dating Black men are much more limited. So if someone's going to tell me then that I'm not pro-Black because I would like to be in a long-term relationship, I very much say that I don't think that's taking a holistic view of the whole world, where we're at today and how we can operate, because I've dated Black men exclusively my whole life up until recently. It's just like a really recent thing, but that is just because of lots of different things. But, you know, yeah.
Have you found it harder to find a white, I mean, I don't know how many white men you've dated, but have you found it easy or difficult to connect with a white man in terms of discussing issues around Blackness and kind of them having a real, genuine
it depends on the person. Some of them have
for sure.
Yes, because some of them have had no understanding, and then some of them have had lots of understanding. But I think, and it's only been a few, but I think the ones that have more understanding tend to have Black friends and Black people, or a mixed social circle. Yeah. More so than some who don't have any kind of mixed circle. That's
do you think there's just an
red flag?
Do you think there's just there's too much affinity to the idea of being pro-Black, as being a badge. So the idea of being pro-black is being black before anybody else. It's about sometimes even your own personal interest, and it's about the collective we. And that ask may be too good. That ask might be too big for where we are geographically, and also where we are in terms of socioeconomically in this country, to ask somebody to commit to that. Like, I think Killer Mike did the thing on Netflix where he tried to only operate within black-owned businesses and services, and he had to sleep on the bench one night, so it didn't work out. And so it may be that branding might be just a step too far. Like, you can be for the black community without being pro-black to the nth degree.
I do think it's context specific, and I think obviously geography and demographics play a role in it. But when I think about Jamaica specifically, and obviously growing up, I know, it's a black majority country. I mean, 98%. And I do know a disproportionate number of my friends and just peers who have lived in Jamaica throughout a significant portion of their life and never dated a black woman. So I think there's context and there's nuance to the conversation. And I take Genelle's point, and because the dating pool does become a lot smaller, particularly in England. But when there's an active avoidance of dating black women because you think it's like a step down in your disposition, or because you want somebody who's really light-skinned, or you want one with a certain type of hair, I think that's a problem for both men and women, because I think it's a problem for both genders.
And I agree. I would find it very strange, even for myself now, if I would say I'm only going to date white guys. No, like I would date a black guy. So for me, it's not about saying I would only date one kind of person. I think anyone who will never date inside of their race, I find that very strange anyway. I find that very strange, peculiar behavior. But I think it's just about me saying I'm giving myself more choice, but I just don't think that makes me less pro-black.
Cool. Okay. So we're going to do a couple of quick ones, because we're only halfway through. How much do you rely on your friends' opinions in relationships?
Too much.
Not really. I feel like my friends they have a deep understanding of who I am, and therefore they have a deep understanding of the choices I make, and they don't really try to force their opinions on me. I think so. Yeah, no, they couldn't say something to me and I'd just be like, oh yeah, you're right, okay, absolutely. But if they did say to me, Nkechi, there's a warning sign here, or I'm seeing a red flag here, or do you know what I mean? I would of course take on board what they say and observe that. So I think there's a level to black female relationships, well, my black female relationships, where we know how to get a message across to the other without being like, oh, you need to leave him, girl, get rid of that one, girl. You know what I mean? We don't need to do that. And I think black men kind of think that happens a lot. I think they think that the girls, like women, are quite influential, and some women are, like, let's be honest.
I was gonna say some women definitely are.
Will just listen to their girlfriend and keep it moving. But
not only that, but I think some women hold their friends to account for their relationship choices. So I've definitely had friends have falling out with me because they don't like who I'm dating.
That's insane.
Wow.
It's like I have a line: I never tell anyone to leave anyone. It's just not it's just not your business. And unless someone's been like in a domestic violence situation, and even then, you can tell people to leave, people will leave when they're ready, rightly or wrongly. But my thing is never tell anyone to leave their partner. And also my other thing is I never take advice from someone who's not somewhere I want to be. So if I'm looking to be married, I'm not taking lots of advice from single people, because you probably don't know. I prefer to take my advice from my friends who are married and in good, healthy relationships, as far as I know. So that's kind of how it goes with advice.
Cool. This one's to mothers, so we'll aim at Nkechi. Do you prioritize work or motherhood, and how do you make it work? So just to give some context, if you were offered a job that would diminish your ability to be as present as you are to your children, what would be the thought process in terms of taking that?
Wow. Motherhood is my first and major priority. My children are my major priority. However, my career is also equally as important, because my career enables me to give my children a great life. So I definitely give more credence to motherhood, 100%. I have worked less hours so that I can be there for both my children on the pickup and the drop off through primary school. I've been very lucky and very fortunate to have a job that's been flexible in me being able to do that. So yeah, motherhood comes first, career comes second, but I'm also want my children to see me develop, to do better, to go for better, to want more, to desire more. So yeah. But of course, motherhood for me is number one.
What do you guys think is the next major step for our community to bring around systemic change for us? So rather than looking at what non-Black people need to do, what do we need to do? What would that one thing that you think would move the needle to improve our outcomes?
Ownership.
Parent households, I'd say. I think fatherlessness is a massive, like, endemic problem. Can you hear me?
No, I'm here.
Oh.
I'm just saying I'm here.
I think that fatherlessness is an endemic, like, massive problem for Black people. It's not just in this country, it's in America as well. And research does suggest that children born without fathers in the home are more likely to be excluded from school, more likely to go to prison, more likely to take drugs, more like just in every aspect of their life they're impacted, and this like specifically impacts Black people. So I think I'm not sure exactly the avenues that we could take as a community to do it, but I think there does need to be more of a kind of communal initiative to promote two-parent households within Black communities, because everywhere you go it disproportionately puts us at a disadvantage.
Cool. Anyone else?
I was going to say ownership. I think as a community, we need to own more stuff. I think we tend to have a big focus, and I don't know whether this is right or wrong, on being included in mainstream stuff. So we want everyone to include us. And I think part of the advancement of our community is actually us understanding that we have the potential, the resources to actually own, do, make, create. We've been doing it for everybody else for ages. Let's do it for ourselves. I think we're getting better. So I'm not going to say it doesn't happen, because I do think as a community we are getting better in that we are understanding it's the unity, it's the strength in numbers that is what gives you that. But I think we do have a long way to go. I think part of what holds us back is we're not good at disagreeing on where we don't agree. So like even the debate on like pro-blackness or single parent families, if we don't agree, it's like we very quickly fracture. And I think we need
it can be a loving
well.
Yeah, it can be a loving conversation.
Well, we can just say, okay, this is what I think pro-Black is, this is what you think pro-Black is, but the one thing we can agree on is that we would all like our communities to advance. This is what this is going to take them. And I think that's going to be good. I'm seeing more Black angel investors, more Black funding for Black female businesses, for Black female tech. These are the kinds of things that I think are going to advance us, give us more
As a foundation as well, I think we need to work on trusting each other. Because there's a lack of trust. There's this underlying lack of trust within us, and that I think prevents us from progressing.
Yeah, because we just
if we trusted each other, we'd be able to move at such a much more rapid rate. But there's always this kind of like, well, what if they do me over? What if this? What if they steal my idea? So that there's there's this distrust within our community. It's kind of unspoken, but it's right there. And I think that if we could work on that fundamentally, then everything else would, well, not just immediately fall into place, but I think that's a major part, a major glitch in our movement.
And it's a scarcity thing. I think that comes from scarcity. We think, oh, there's one Black person in that organization, there can't be two. There can only be one Naomi Campbell, there can only be one whoever, whatever it is, one Diane Abbott, when actually there's so much more space. And I think if we roll back from that, from thinking that there's not enough for everyone, to that actually there's enough for everyone. And if someone steals your idea, so what? They probably can't execute it in the way you would anyway, so you just still keep going, and that's not a reason to stop. But like I said, you know, I think you're right. We don't trust each other. We fracture quickly, and then it doesn't give us any time to build on the foundations that are done. We quickly just dismantle that, and it's sad.
Cool.
Yeah.
This is a bit of a Tinder Hinge question. What do you look for in a black man? So what's your variables? What's your prioritization when you're looking? I'm going to focus on Leanne, Dom, and Jen on this one.
Leave me out of this one.
Yeah. I don't want your husband texting me, so yeah, everybody
go.
else.
You're still looking.
I think for me, who wants to go first?
We'll go Genelle
No, go on,
first.
you
I'll
go.
left to right.
Okay.
Okay.
Intelligence, ambition, kindness, I think is a big thing I'm looking for as well. I think those are probably the three, and obviously you need to be attracted to them, but I think that goes without saying.
Buff, I'll be buff.
but I think those are the top three things, and I think one of the biggest things I do look for now is kindness, because there's lots of ambitious men and there's lots of intelligent men. Kindness to me is a big factor, because people who are mean about everything. They're mean with their words, they're mean with their money, they're mean with their stuff, they're mean with their attitude. And people who are kind tend to be kinder in all of those areas. So kindness is a big one, and just someone that I can actually take home to meet my dad, because that's actually a big thing for me in our family, and someone that can be in different spaces. I think I'm looking for a black man we can be at home, we can be corporate, we can be wherever we go, because I'm in lots of different spaces, and that's like a big thing.
Cool. Dom?
I think for me, I don't like I don't really wouldn't aim to date just one race. I mean, obviously I've dated black men. I've only been in like 3 major relationships, but it's varied from 2 black to 1 Pakistani. But just in general, I'd say that what I look for is intelligence, and intelligence is a major one. Masculinity, I think, is important. Just my personal preference, I don't find effeminate men attractive. Just
you
me.
Want to be lifted, it's fine, you can say it.
Yeah, like I want to be around like a man, a man's man. Intelligence, masculinity, obviously physical attraction, ambition is a major one. I couldn't be with someone that didn't have ambition. And yeah, you have to make me laugh as well.
Cool. Leanne?
Sure. It's interesting because I texted you this morning. I sent you a snippet of a conversation where a man, told me that the reason that I don't have a husband and children is because I expect men to be extraordinary. And I didn't send you the response, but my response to that was, yes, I do. And by extraordinary, I don't mean perfect. By extraordinary, I mean, I do want all of the things that Genelle and Dom mentioned in terms of intellect and ambition, and kindness is definitely a huge thing in terms of how you treat other people. But also I want someone who is going to challenge me, and someone who I look up to almost and makes me want to be a better person. You know, I know I'm flawed, and someone who motivates me to be better because they are better, or because they also want to be better, is something that I find extremely attractive. And as a side, I'm attracted to people who have like extreme talents. So people who are creative, or people who are, you know, forward thinking in terms of academia or anything like that. Someone who excels, I find, and I guess that leads back to ambition, is something I find really attractive.
Cool.
Emotional stability.
Yes, come on.
There's a counterbalance to that, right? Which is that it is unstable. But I'm okay with the instability, to be honest. And I do.
You know what? An awareness. As long as the man has an awareness of his emotional instability.
Yes.
I think I'm just speaking of like my single friends. I think that's that's like a common thing that keeps coming up, that men are not aware of what their traumas are, or how it's affected them, or how it's how it's made them into the man that they are. And I think that I would imagine that would be quite an attractive thing, somebody who's actually aware of what they've been through and is working through that.
Yeah, and I think transparency comes to mind when you say that, just because I think we are all flawed, but someone who will say, look, I am flawed, but I'm willing to work with you through these things, and we're going to work through these things together, and be brutally transparent and honest about where they are. So you can determine whether you can help them, whether they can help you, etc. So I think transparency is the foundation of that for me.
Cool. So stats show that Black women are higher educated and are continues to be higher educated than Black men. How do you think that will impact either dating choices or the shape of society in the next few years, 5-10 years, or next generation? We'll take one answer on this one.
I've historically dated men that I've never dated a man that has a PhD or is,
that's the problem. Not joking.
No, and to be honest, I don't think I need that. As going back to what Genelle said, I think there are lots of intelligent and ambitious men who do really well successfully, but they're not often kind. And in my experience, sometimes they do carry some of those toxic attributes of wanting a woman who is less than they are. And so I've learned to appreciate intellect in a different way that isn't consistent along with the traditional format of that. So I don't need someone who has a formal education to consider them intellectual or to make as much money as me. I think it doesn't matter.
Cool.
Within reason.
Cool. That's fair. If Labour are courting the northern white working class vote, should we review who we vote for? So I understand there are no Black people in the shadow cabinet. There are some people in the wider shadow something, I can't remember what the word is. I think we have 2. So should we be reviewing who we vote for? Because it sounds like post-election or post-Brexit and post-general election, the rhetoric was that we need to review or Labour need to court the white working class northern vote back from the Midlands and the northern vote. And that doesn't sound like there's any room, space or interest in Black concerns. So where do you guys sit on that? I'll start with Dom because you have a view on it already, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, I'm Northern, I'm from Manchester. My point would be that Labour don't really do anything for Black people anyway. So I think my personal view is that lending over 80% of your vote for a party every single election, I don't see how that's democratic anyway. So I think the fact that such a large majority of Black people instinctively go for the Labour Party despite them not really doing anything specific for Black people, just having Black faces anyway, I would find questionable. I don't think, however, in a less biased way, I don't think that's any reason to kind of review who you vote for just essentially based on race. As long as they're presenting tangibles for Black people, I don't see why that would be a problem. But just in general, I think it's ridiculous that such a vast majority of Black people only vote for Labour in the first place, and that Black people who don't vote for Labour, like myself, are so widely ridiculed and abused by other Black people. Because my view is, at the end of the day, if you are for the advancement of Black people and people who present tangibles for Black people, surely you would want Black people represented and present on both sides of the political spectrum. So no matter what party is in power at the time, you know that there are people that are Black on either side of the spectrum that will fight to see tangibles for you, is my view.
Genelle, we had this conversation actually just before we did this podcast randomly. Where are you with it?
I think my view is that I don't think it's hard to say we shouldn't vote amongst race lines, because you say over 80% of Black people tend to vote Labour every time, all the time, and they seem to have guaranteed our vote. I think that is incorrect from the point of view that I don't think that we hold any party to account enough in between campaign cycles. So in the intervening years, let's say when we have given Labour our vote, how are we then holding them to account on the things that they said they would do for us in the 5 years between, that makes them know if these things aren't done, our vote is not guaranteed, because that's really the only thing that makes politicians move, is knowing they're going to lose your vote next time, potentially lose or gain power because of it. And so I think as a community of people, we are not doing enough to hold our politicians to account. So right now, I feel like as generally the population is uneducated on how to lobby their MPs in between elections. And so right now, as a race of people, we really need to be thinking as a community, what is it that we want? What is it that we need? What do we need to advance? What are those tangible things, as you just said? And really hold our MPs and hold parties to account that we are going to be looking for these things, not just when it's election time and you come to our community centres and our churches and you say nice things and bless God, he's a lovely man. No. What we need is, we need to know that it was then done. And if it's not done, you're going to lose our vote, and we're going to vote for someone who's going to do the things that we're asking for. So I think we do need to have a greater scrutiny on politicians and parties, both sides. Cool. And I agree with you on having people in both parties representing us as well.
Yeah, there was definitely this large anti-black or person of color conservative movement that was going on online. I think there was a female footballer whose name is now eluding me. Oh my gosh, that's so bad. But she used to play for Juventus. She was also at the centre of quite a large race row, but she came out and said that she voted Conservative, and a lot of people were saying that you're down, you're cancelled, which obviously isn't a real thing, but just the response was quite negative, bearing in mind she's been a champion of many other things that benefit us. So it was
if you earn a lot of money, Conservatives are a good person for you to vote for if you earn a lot of money, because they are the party that, if you're rich, they're the one that's going to be offering you a lot of the policies that are going to be more aligned to your pockets. Yeah. And I think it was interesting what Kanye West said, just to reference him. I know he says lots of things, but what he was saying about he's not for the culture, because sometimes the culture's not for him. And I think sometimes what we need to be wary of is that we're thinking about every different circumstance. Not every black person is from a poor area.
Yeah, from an estate with a sick.
So that's the media stereotype. We do not need to buy into that. But when we do buy into that, then we think we almost vote for this party because that's catering for all black people, and it's really not true. I think we need to have a better view of our community as a whole.
Cool. I have a 3-pronged question, which I'm going to throw together. 1, how do we understand women better? 2, is I'm sorry you feel that way an apology? And 3, do you see apologizing as a weakness? Feel free to, I can say them again if needed.
What was the first one?
How can we understand you better? Because we want to understand.
Talk to us, listen to us, actually listen when you ask a question and we answer it, actually listen. I think men have a kind of, I'm generalizing here, but I think in general, you kind of just hear us talking and it doesn't actually permeate, and you actually don't actually listen and take on board what we're saying because you've already got your defenses up. Actually, just come to your woman, not in an argument, not after an event, not after a fallout, not after anything. Just come to your woman and be like, babes, you know when da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, what? And be ready for the answer and be ready to digest it and be ready to be able to give emotionally mature responses. So for me, listen and communicate. That's how you get to know us better, and don't feed into what you've been taught, what society's taught you about us. Because I think even within our relationships, within our own private households, there's still we've still got a lot of programming in our head about what a black woman's about, what a black man's about, and that comes into our intimate relationships and can be quite damaging.
Cool. I'm gonna bully Leanne and be like, do you see apologizing as a weakness? And is I'm sorry you feel that way an apology?
I do not think I'm sorry if you feel that way is an apology. It actually really winds me up when people apologize in that way, because it's just another way of saying, I know I didn't do anything wrong, but since you're upset, let me apologize, which is not holding yourself accountable in any way, shape, or form. But I don't think that apologizing is a weakness. I think, you know, I'm one of the quickest people to say I'm sorry, or that, you know, it's my bad, or I've obviously made a mistake. And I think it actually is a sign of strength, that the fact that you're able to hold yourself to account and recognize something and make amends, and then do the work to do better the next time.
Cool. Fair. So I want.
But if you're not sorry, should you apologize?
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'm not sorry. Because sometimes I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry. I have pulled for that. I'm sorry that you feel that
I was
way.
just going to say, and don't apologize just because you think you should.
100%.
Yeah, apologize
Because I
because you
think that
mean
happens
it.
within relationships as well. Men will just say I'm sorry because they're like, okay, I just want a peaceful life now. So
yeah,
all right, yep. I hear what you're saying. Yep, I'm sorry. God, I'm really sorry. Yeah, I won't do that again. Whatever. So that we don't have to talk about this anymore.
I prefer to hear I'm not sorry, but I'd like to try and understand, really understand why you feel that way.
That's
because
yeah,
brilliant.
That it is, but I think that would be better, because sometimes I'll tell people I'm sorry, I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry, but I want to try and understand why you feel the way you feel genuinely, but I can't apologize if genuinely
because my mum and dad. Okay. If you made 3 times as much as your man, is that a turn off? I'm going to start with Genelle, because you talked about dating at work and how serious you take that.
No, it isn't, but I think it is if the man feels insecure about it, because I think there's been situations where actually for me it's not a massive issue.
Isn't it a little bit frustrating if a man comes to you and he's like, oh, like, so not
if he's asking me, not if he's asking me for money to pay his phone bill. That's a different conversation. But like you say,
just like the shared bills, it's like I don't get paid until, you know, like I didn't get as much money as I did. I had to miss some hours. Can you?
Do you know what? Those things aren't a problem, because financial situations can change over time, and I think you can take a decision at a moment, and that could all change. You could lose your job tomorrow. COVID's shown us that. What does it mean? But I think what I have noticed sometimes about men who do have earned less is that they feel away that they earn less, and that then affects the way that they feel and can operate. And sometimes that, I hope that is without any interference from me about that, because money, I'm not massively motivated by money, so I'm probably not the best person for this question, because I'm not massively motivated by money, but it's not a massive issue as long as the guy feels secure in that and he's not going to bring that insecurity into the relationship.
I don't know, I feel like women say that they wouldn't mind, but I feel like in that situation I think they would, because I think a lot of women, whether or not they want to admit it, want to be with someone that they feel can protect them and look after them, and that is, you know, normally the role that a man assumes in a relationship. A man is supposed to be the protector and the provider. So I personally feel that me earning 3 times more money than my partner is unattractive and emasculating, because really there's no reason for me, well, unless it's emotionally, but really there's no reason for me to stay with a person if they have nothing to offer me, really. So I don't know, I'd find it unattractive, definitely.
Do you know what it is? I hear the majority, but there is a practical element of a man that comes to you, like, say you're booking a holiday and he's like looking at you to like lead it, drive it, own it. There's something about that action that's a little bit unsexy and a little bit whimpery of like, you know, can you pay the bill now, or can you have you got your card? What's your long number?
That's all about how we can program, though.
So unattractive.
You see, for me, that's all about programming, because ultimately I could have a man that earns 3 times less than me, but actually what he brings to the relationship in another dimension could be so rich that actually I may have the resource, the money resource, right? But he may have a totally different resource that he brings to us, and that then encourages the growth of our relationship. So I mean, everybody has different mindsets. Again, we have to think about our programming, and what we've been taught is a relationship. What we've been taught is your role as a man. All of these things that we've just been programmed to believe. But actually, you may be the emotional anchor. You may be the more the parent that gives of themselves a whole heap more, and I may not have been able to do the job that I do as a mother, or the job that I do to earn that 3 times more without you. So it's all about where we place our value. What, I mean, monetarily, is that really the be and end all? Not for me. For me, it's about
I wouldn't say that it's
you equaling me on some level, and it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be financial.
I see it as I personally view relationships as a betterment. So I would want to be with someone that can better me, and if I'm with someone that isn't as successful as me, financially or career-wise, I don't see how they're contributing to my growth. So I personally find someone that was dependent on me, like, very attractive.
Can I ask you, sorry, but what if someone looked at you that way, as in they're the better one because they're earning more money and you're looking to them for like a lift up in their eyes, let's say? For me, I think that is it's an interesting take, and I see where you're coming from, because it's nice. I've dated really rich boyfriends who can take you to really nice restaurants, so that's nice.
No, not for that. It's not for that reason. It's not a purely materialistic reason. It's a security reason. If I'm not with a man that can provide me with security,
but do you not want to? Okay, well, I guess where I see it is you're a team, and I guess I've always seen it definitely modelled in my home anyway. Is like marriage is like, or a relationship is like a team event. And so it's the betterment of both parties. So I'm not really looking for a man for my betterment in that sense. I'm looking for a relationship where I can better you and you can better me. And materialism or materialistic things or money is one pillar of a relationship. And we've talked about others in this, like sex and just different things. But I think I would hate for a man to look at me as his betterment. And I'm not looking to a man as a betterment either. I'm looking for more of a team situation.
But what I mean is, it's with earning 3 times more, that's like 3 times is a lot more money that you're earning than someone else. So if you look at that logically, you are logically going to be in more of a successful position than that person. You're obviously going to have achieved more in your life. And for me, I personally want to be with someone that can match that, or someone that can kind of surpass that as a man, because personally I view a man as someone that should be a protector and a provider. I as a woman do not desire to be the protector and the provider, so that's why I'd prefer to be with someone that had more than me and could provide that security and protection for me. It's not purely because, oh, you can take me to nice places. It's more of the wider connotations of earning more than a man, is what I mean.
Really interesting.
Cool. We're going into the home straight, guys. Stay strong. How can we cultivate a safe space for us both? So what are we trying to create as a container for us all to grow healthily and emotionally, physically, socioeconomically, etc.? If anyone's got anything.
Is that community-wise or within a relationship?
Community-wise.
I think
I'll take one on this one. Go on, Leanne.
I was going to say, speaking to what Genelle said earlier and speaking to the conversation that we had earlier in the podcast, I think there needs to be this underlying foundation of mutual respect, and Nkechi said this as well, and believing each other, and taking each other's word as valid and as valued. I think there needs to be this underlying conversation where we can appreciate to agree to disagree. And as long as we can establish that we're both equal and both of our words have value, I think that's the starting point for us to grow together. Because as I said, it's one thing within this space of female empowerment for us to keep pushing forward and keep feeling empowered and keep rising in our careers and other areas. But if men aren't coming along with us, then it kind of defeats the purpose of us growing collectively.
Cool. We're going to keep moving. How would you advise us to approach the conversation of us being turned off by an outfit, makeup choice, or weight concern?
With great caution. And fear and trepidation and lots of prayer.
Please provide tips, because men are struggling. in communicating?
I think, do you know what? That is just a really tricky subject. I think when it comes to anything about the way someone looks, whether or not you could put a tablespoon of sugar on it, if it's not what the person wants to hear, they're going to take it badly. I think something that I learned, a technique, someone wants to talk about management, which I tried, it works sometimes with some people. I'd use you sandwich the conversation, everyone knows about this, but I'd be like, oh my gosh, it's going to be like a really tough conversation. Then we'd have the conversation after, I'd be like, that was a really tough conversation, wasn't it? And I don't think those words are appropriate for a relationship, but I think there just needs to be a sense of, I'm about to say something that I don't think you're going to like. This is the place it's coming from. And I think your intention is a lot. If it's from your heart, well-being, for their well-being, they're overweight, let's say. If it's just because you want a sexy, slim woman for your friends, then that whole conversation is just going to be led differently and said differently. So I think it depends on your intent and the way you approach it.
Cool.
You've got to approach it with tenderness.
Yeah.
With tenderness, be genuine, be loving, and like you said, Genelle, I think that's really right. You have to precursor it with, I'm probably going to say something that you really are not going to like, but I'm coming from this place and I feel that it's affecting me, it's affecting us, and I don't want it to get any worse. I don't want it to go any further. So can we talk about this? Or can you come back to me when you're ready to actually hear what I have to say?
Yes.
This is the thing.
Pick the moment.
It doesn't have to be right then and there. This is the thing that I think we both need to learn from both sides. The conversation doesn't have to happen right there and right then. It can be like, listen, I really have something difficult I need to speak to you about. You may not be in the space right now, come back to me. Likelihood is the woman's going to be like, no, say it to me now. And from that, not to say it to her now,
and also, and just quickly, just let the response happen when they're ready as well. Sometimes we push for the conversation to be finished. Exactly, be prepared, and also be prepared. Okay, we don't have to finish talking about this today. Do you want to go away and think about it, and then let's have a conversation when you're ready, rather than being like, let's just finish it now. So, like I just said, sensitive going in and sensitive exiting, because the last thing you leave it as said. And just remember that whatever you say, you can't take back. Once your words are out, that's it, they're out there. So pick the words, think about what you're going to say before you do it.
Caring. Yeah.
Cool.
Do it with care.
What is your understanding of the male ego and how do you use it or navigate it?
Father George.
There's no time. There's not enough time. There's not enough time. You said to stay strong. We're on the home straight.
Come on, girls. We've got this.
I think it's a little bit about. I think it's about knowing people's boundaries, and also I think for me, love languages is a big deal. So knowing how to feed somebody's ego, and this is across genders. And understanding how people receive information and how they relate information is really key. So, if I'm dating someone and I know that, they have an appreciation for acts of service, then, if I'm trying to play to someone's ego, that's probably the avenue that I'm going to take. And also being sensitive to their triggers, like Nkechi said earlier, understanding what people's triggers are, knowing where their traumas lie, and being sensitive to those things.
Cool. Cool.
Not enough time.
No, I sensed not enough time. What are your views on polyamory as a modern relationship structure? Apparently, according to insights in the UK and the US, it's the fastest growing relationship status. I can hear some breathing.
You know what? I have a few couples who are polyamorous, and they are by and large the happier set of relationships as I know. I think we really constrain ourselves to this heteronormative idea of what relationships need to look like. And I think instead we should just be saying, if this works for you, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. But it's about making sure that what you're choosing is based on what you really want. A lot of women, and myself included, stick to this idea of loyalty and of stepping outside of the relationship is as being problematic. But really, if you have an open and transparent conversation about where people are comfortable, are you comfortable with one night stands? Some people are. You know, some people want to just know where you are and what you're doing, and whatever that means for them is, and you navigate that together. So I think for me, the fact that people are polyamorous and they're actually just speaking, you know, or acting upon what they genuinely want as opposed to being constrained by the status quo, I think is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I respect anybody that can manage a polyamorous relationship or a polygamous relationship. And I think that in actual fact, I agree totally with what Leanne says. I think that socially, again, we've been just trained that this is how a relationship's supposed to be. It's supposed to be me and you. You're never supposed to, once we get married, you're never supposed to look at another woman again. I mean, come on. You're never supposed to look at another man again. You're never supposed to desire anybody again. I mean, really, I just feel like that the dialogue, again, I think that within a relationship, especially long-term relationships, there has to be this dialogue. And if you can start a relationship on an honest footing about where you believe you're at, what your expectations are, and vice versa, then you kind of hopefully start off on a really good footing. If you're both like, we want to be monogamous, it's not even an option for us, fine. But I think that a lot of people, if they didn't live in fear of being judged or not being able to actually develop that relationship with that other person, they actually might be able to stay in their relationship for longer and be happier because they were able to be honest and there was open dialogue all the way through. And that doesn't mean that a polyamorous relationship or a polygamous relationship or an open relationship has to be for the whole relationship.
Yeah, it could change.
You know, it could be, like you said, one night stand or what. So I feel like we have to be very mindful, especially in the day and age that we live in, of like really reflecting ourselves, because a lot of relationships are ending and a lot of relationships are not successful because there's just not an honest conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And it could have actually probably been really difficult and really, really, you know, it might be traumatic for the other person, but at least that conversation was had, and then you can move on from that point. Instead, the conversation doesn't get had, expectations get destroyed, and then the relationship's done. You've just got like what could have been a really healthy, beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Can you take a guess at what percentage of men know and understand the vulva and why? Why do you put it at the level that you put it at?
I can't even hazard a guess.
Everyone looked up and left. Everyone just went out there. I don't know what's up there.
To be honest with you, I only just discovered the difference between the vulva and the vagina. Like,
yeah, I have to thank Leanne for that. Actually, she
thanks, Leanne. Yeah, Leanne.
The Goop Lab.
Me?
Yeah, you took me to the Goop Lab.
Shit, I forgot.
Because I didn't know the difference between vagina and the vulva. So if I didn't know, and I have one, I would say maybe 10% of men know that.
And they're all gynecologists.
Yeah.
You know what? I, by and large, have dated Jamaican men. Even in England, living here for 12 years, I've still somehow dated Caribbean men, by and large. And an ex of mine often said that the way in which he learned about sexual interaction with women was through dancehall. And so I think that has worked to many men's disadvantage in feeding into some of the kind of ideas that we find in pornography and dancehall culture in terms of the lyrics and so on. And so I think there's this very sedimented idea of what sexual satisfaction should look like to a woman, instead of realizing that there's actually a myriad of ways in which women can be satisfied, and that each woman is really different. And I think that in and of itself is a problem. But even before you get into the idea of knowing the biology behind all of it.
Cool. Can I just invite everyone to go watch episode 3 of the Goop Lab on Netflix?
Please.
It's so
Everyone
good.
that's listening,
So good.
every
It
single
changed my
person
life.
that's listening to this, go and watch episode 3 of the Goop Lab on Netflix. It will
Thanks,
open your mind.
Cool. This is going to be the last one, actually. So thank you guys for being in the marathon with me. I now know that we can be in the trenches together on anything. And I'm sure it'll be much nicer than it is in the Dope Bad Dads group. So thank you all. If you could be a man for a day, what would you do?
Child.
Everyone's in isolation and it's late, so I want to keep this relatively clean for the family years.
Well, I would definitely have sex, 100%.
Just to see what
Because
it's like.
I want to know what you feel, because I'm never gonna get that opportunity again.
Do you know what's wild? I would never want to have sex. That would freak me the fuck out. It's complete opposite. Like, don't touch me.
It's funny that pretty much all of the women said that are agreeing that that's at least one of the things that they would do.
Yeah. Just men are disgusting.
They're all shaking their heads, people. You can't see them, but they're all shaking their heads in agreement.
Yeah. Okay.
I just like to go into an all-male conversation.
Yes.
Just like, just be in the room and just hear what guys talk about without any filter. Because whenever we hear what the conversation is, obviously it's a filter. So yeah.
We took the good filters.
That's a good one. I'd like to know what it feels like to be a father as well.
Yeah.
Like really feels like. Because I can never, I'll no matter how many fathers I know, I'm never gonna understand that emotional connection to your children. I'm never gonna understand all of those feelings that you may have. And I think we make quite a lot of assumptions about what fathers are about and what they feel and how they act, and how they act equals how they feel, which actually a lot of the time isn't the case. So I would definitely want to be a dad.
Cool.
I'd also just like to
involve father.
Yeah, I'd also like to do a day, my normal day, but just see what difference it would make if I was a man. How would people treat me? I would just love to see, like, just do a day, go to all the same place I go to, go get my coffee, go do whatever, go to work, tell people to do things, see if they just do them. I just like to see what my day would be like if I was a man. Yeah, those are all the things basically.
Just to respond to the idea of being a dad, I think one of the biggest challenges and themes that come up quite often is that we usually find we have to work for the love of our children in a slightly different way, and so it's a different relationship. Most relationships are you either manipulate your way in, or there's a mutual respect, and so someone's working with you. With a child, they are so honest and pure. They can't be manipulated, so you've really got to do the work, and then you realize that there's no shortcuts in parenting. So I think that's the toughest thing that I found, is that there's no smoothing, sweet talking way around children. You've really got to invest the time, and it doesn't always necessarily yield the rewards that you're used to, so it becomes a bit of a psychosis in a way, in terms of just affinity with something you're investing so much in. So that'll be my thoughts. Cool. Thank you guys so much. To be honest, I learned so much, and it's really nice actually listening and not having to play a different role on a podcast where I'm driving things. I was really enjoying hearing the perspectives of the room. So I feel like I've curated the cast exceptionally well, but you've also shared really authentically. So thank you guys so much. Could you all just give any last finding thought that you've had around the last actually 2 hours that we've been together, and then where people can find you? We'll start with Genelle.
Yeah, I think probably one thing I want to say that I didn't get to say is, I'm going to say it really quickly. My dad's been in my life all my life, and the absolute security that I've had from being in, like Dom said, that 2-parent family definitely has given me a massive safety net my whole life, which probably made me slightly reckless in some things I've done, because I've always known I've got mom and dad there, like with the safety net. My career, so I'm a journalist. I have it because my parents could support me through internships, through moving to London, all of those things. So I'm a journalist by trade. I've been a newsreader and reporter for around 12 to 13 years on TV. You can find me mainly on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Genelle Aldred, and I'm also moving into consultancy. So that's interesting and exciting in COVID times.
Amazing. Dom?
Yeah, this is kind of different from what I usually do, because what I usually talk about is purely political stuff. So this was a nice change, actually, talking about more social issues. So I did enjoy it. I'm mostly just an online kind of political commentator and stuff. And you can find me at Dominique Tagan on Twitter and at Dominique T Samuels on Instagram.
Cool. Nkechi?
Wow. What am I? I am. Oh God, I've just got really, really stumped. I would describe myself as a confident, vivacious, loving Black woman who is deeply steeped in family and friends, who has been on an exceptionally amazing spiritual journey and continues to be on one, who is constantly wanting to better herself, and I steep my whole foundations of life on maintaining my peace and my joy and working from that. My socials are really just really private for my friends and family, so I'm not going to give those out. But
Cool. So just
yeah,
follow Dope Black Mums, that's fine.
just follow Dope Black Mums. You'll find me there many a time.
Cool. Leanne?
So yeah, I mean, I revel in these conversations, and a lot of the work that I do often centers around gender interaction, particularly within minority communities. So I'm a political scientist, and a lot of the research that I do focuses on sexual violence in minority communities, and using restorative justice as a way of reconciling sexual violence. And and as a result of that, I do a lot of work with the reintegration of sex offenders and male offenders generally. And yeah, in terms of my socials, I'm also the co-founder of Dope Black Woman. Can't forget that. So please check out Dope Black Woman, as well as Dope Black Moms, obviously, and listen to our podcast too. And yeah, my socials are LeeBeeJA on Instagram, so LeeBeeJA on Instagram, and just Leanne Levers on Twitter.
Amazing. Guys, thank you so much. Really appreciate you all joining me. For everybody, please make sure you follow us at all of our socials at Dope Black Dads. My social media is Marvin_Harrison on Twitter and at Marvin Harrison on Instagram. Please get this podcast wherever you find your podcast, and also feel free to email us at hello@dopeblackdads.com if you have any rants, concerns, or shares for us. Guys, thank you so much, and we'll hopefully do this again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.